In this video, we're going to take a look at some of the different treatments and preventions of different viral diseases. So, treating and preventing viral diseases can be really difficult, and there are many reasons why. First off, viruses multiply quickly, so they'll likely have spread throughout the body before symptoms even appear. We've seen that with various different viral diseases that have been going on for the past couple of years. Viruses can also mutate their DNA and their RNA, and that happens quite rapidly. So this can provide a lot of drug resistance. And then it's also hard to target only the virus without also affecting the host or the host cell. So there are several vaccines and antiviral drugs that have been developed despite all of these challenges. Some work great, some work don't so great. So let's take a look at a few of these. First off, vaccines. Vaccines work great. They stimulate the immune system to produce antibodies against the virus, and that helps to prepare the immune system to stop infections from happening. So things like measles, mumps, polio, these all have very, very effective vaccines that work. In terms of antiviral drugs, there are a variety of different sort of ones out there, and they work in a number of different ways. So some can alter the genetic material within cells. So this one here, acyclovir, stops viral DNA replication, and that treats cold sores. So that one actually works quite well. Some can inhibit the activity of enzymes within the host cell. And so some of the drugs to treat HIV, so this particular one here will inhibit the HIV virus enzyme that's essential for assembling the new viruses. So that actually keeps HIV in check quite well. And some also prevent binding of viruses to the host cell surface. So some AIDS drug treatments use this particular method. And finally, some different drugs will prevent the virus from leaving the host cell. So the virus is able to come in, infect the cell, do all of its hijacking, but then can't leave to go infect new cells. And so those are a couple of different antiviral drugs that will do that. Let's take a closer look at those two. Before we do that, though, let's first kind of talk about the influenza virus. And so the influenza virus has a couple of important features. First is this hemagglutinin. And this particular sort of structure on the outside of the virus is going to allow the virus to bind to receptors on the surface of the cell to be infected. And it binds specifically to sialic acid. And then the other one is this neuraminidase. So this is an enzyme on the surface of the enzyme that's going to break down the mucus surrounding cells in the respiratory tract. And that allows it access to the target cell. And so it specifically is going to break the sialic acid bond to the rest of the glycoprotein. So that's actually quite important for how the viruses get re-released back from the host cell, and we'll see that momentarily. So looking at our virus cycle of our influenza, this is our influenza virus here. It's going to bind to the target cell using that hemagglutinin, and then that gets taken in by the cell by a process called endocytosis. And then basically that will release all of its particles because we have a slightly more acidic environment here. It's going to release it all. All the wonderful things happen in terms of making more proteins, making more of the genetic material, and then we get reassembly of our viruses here. And so they come back up to the surface here. Through a process of budding, they recreate this virus here. Now, the virus release from the surface of the cell is going to require this neuraminidase enzyme. So if it has this neuraminidase enzyme, it gets released and goes back out in order to infect more host cells. The neuraminidase, remember, breaks the link between the sialic acid and the rest of the membrane glycoprotein. And so influenza antiviral drugs are neuraminidase inhibitors. So essentially, they block this enzyme, the neuraminidase here, and so the viruses get stuck to the cell surface of the host cells and are no longer able to release. And so that's how these antiviral drugs work. So there are two different ones, Tamiflu and Relenza, or the full sort of crazy names are there. And like I said, they're neuraminidase inhibitors. They bind to the enzyme active site, and they prevent the enzyme from catalyzing the hydrolysis of sialic acid from the glycoproteins in the cell membrane. So the viruses remain anchored to the cell and can't infect other cells. They can be taken when flu symptoms develop or as a preventative measure for high-risk individuals. Tamiflu is oral, whereas Relenza is inhalation because it has poor bioavailability when taken orally. Now, finally, just kind of taking a look at the structures, they do look quite similar, but they do have a variety of different sort of functional groups and different things attached. So you may want to pause the video there and just take a note of the different sort of functional groups in each, as well as look for any chiral centers that might appear in both of these particular compounds. Okay, so that is how we can treat and prevent some different viral diseases. That's it for this video. We'll see you in the next one.